The content presented is for entertainment purposes only. Some content may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. There's a lot of things that I struggle with in life. And one of the things I have a hard time wrapping my head around and actually going, okay, this makes sense to me, is cancel culture. Cancel culture, there's just something about it that I'm just like, wait, people are doing what? They're doing it to whom? Now, granted, I'm sure there are some instances where, this worked really great and, for abhorrent people, I'm sure it's worked well, but it's also backfired and it's actually hurt a lot of people as well. So I guess we're just going to kind of jump into this and we'll talk a little bit about it. I got some good articles for y'all today, and the links should be in the description down below. If it's not, obviously leave me a comment and I'll make sure they get in there. Canceling is an individual's volitional act of publicly rejecting and actively pursuing harm against a perceived transgressor. There are two parties in every canceling episode: the person who cancels, the canceler, and the entity, person, group, or organization that is canceled. Canceling requires the canceler to engage in three psychological processes. Number one, identify or become aware of a transgression and judge it to be significant. Two, the experience is strong negative emotion, the canceler. And three, the act of punitively and visibly to harm the transgressor. Now, I find this very interesting because it's a lot about the feelings with cancel culture. It's about taking words, and I've also noticed that there have been instances where, things were taken out of context, or things were taken seriously when they weren't, or it was like out of a joke or whatever that he didn't find funny. But a lot of it has to do with the awakening of emotion, from the person that goes, aha, this person is a dirty, dirty jerk, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to get him. I'm going to do everything possible. All right. And an individual act of canceling is psychological rejection. When it is communicated through social media and joined in by other individuals who feel the same way or looking for an outrage fix, canceling spreads like a contagion, amplifying the harm to the canceled entity. It becomes social canceling. Instead of one person, a group now seeks punitive action against the canceled entity. So this person gets offended by something or someone, and then they perpetuate it through social media. And of course, you have the mob that decides to follow and perpetuates it to the point where it becomes viral, of course. The reach and spread afforded by the hydra of social media, because it has many heads, provide the fuel for its spread. Social contagion is the second essential step, the culture aspect of canceling, quote unquote, the mob. Psychologically speaking, cancel culture should really be called social canceling because that is what it is. With this background, we can define social canceling, not counseling. Their words are so close together. What is this English language I'm speaking? We can define social canceling this way, which is actually this article that I got this from has a really interesting take because we're calling it cancel culture, which is like a cultivative group of people who are focusing on this one person or group or post or opinion piece or joke, and they cultivate the mob mentality, the hydra of social media, because it has many heads. You cut off one, there's always one there. And they pursue relentlessly against people. And what I think is really interesting, who knows who's really behind the keyboard? It could be, some 14-year-old kids having fun online, in their mother's basements. And they're just like, haha, we're going to cancel Twitter today. We're going to cancel this person today. We're going to cancel these kinds of people today. Or it could be the Karens and the Richards of the world who just want to be outraged for outrage's sake, basically. And then I think there's people who legitimately do have a case, where people do say something that is abhorrent, that is gross, that it's disgusting, or is harmful. But what I don't understand is this vigilantism where people want to go and seek opportunities where they can say, hey, you're doing things wrong. You made a mistake. Let me light this up for you. Let me gaslight it. And what sucks is that there are people who have had themselves canceled and they've lost their livelihood. They've lost close relationships. They've lost friends. They've lost family. I think a lot of times people don't understand that when they decide to take things in their own hands, and go basically around or above the law, is the aftermath. And I think a lot of people who decide that, well, we're going to cancel somebody, they don't really know or understand the effects it's going to have. Sure, they might get them fired from their job, but, maybe they can actually go out and get a better job. But what about the relationships that were lost? I think a good example of wrongful cancelization was the what was that one team that the girl accused them of sexual violence on her, and it turned out that it didn't happen. I can't remember. I think it was maybe a team. I can't think of the top of my head, so I'm not going to say it because I don't 100% know the team or the circumstances. I just remember that I read it in an article where this person accused, some individuals of wrongdoing, and then the social media caught whiff of this. And of course, the outrage mob picked it up and continued to spread it across everything. And it literally broke these people. And I know there's other instances where this happened. Now, I know there are many instances where this actually was helpful and it actually got some pretty disgusting and gross people, put in their place where the law didn't seem was doing its job. But I think it's really important that if you do find something that is of a violent nature, especially if it's online, you definitely want to go to the authorities with it. I don't know exactly what the process is because social media has only been around for, less than 20 years now. It's still, it's not new, but in technological terms, technology is continually evolving. The people that are creating it are continually evolving it. Algorithms are being homed in and things like that. But when people start thinking that they can take things into their own hands, that's where things can get dicey. Perfect example. I had a Karen the other day while I was out delivering packages. And I delivered a particular package, which was very small, very light, and it wasn't fragile or anything. And when I had dropped it onto the doorstep, it actually rolled. Now, this happens sometimes. Obviously, it doesn't break anything. I haven't had anybody come back and say, oh, yeah, you broke my priceless heirloom from my family or whatever. I mean, but she decided to take it upon herself to come outside, walk up to my car, and put her hand on my car and tell me exactly how I needed to do my job. Now, I understand and I get it. If you see some bullshit, you should call people out on their bullshit. But my thing is that would it be appropriate for me to go to somebody's work, observe their work, and then tell them how to do their job better? I don't think it's appropriate. And obviously, if you do have a legitimate complaint, always go through the proper channels. Don't confront somebody when they're doing their job. Like, there's a perfect example. I've done DoorDash and Uber Eats quite a bit over the last few years. And I was getting really frustrated because, in my opinion, when I was going to a certain place, they were not preparing the drinks. They were actually giving me the cups and saying, hey, there it is over there. Go fill up the drinks that you're going to go and deliver. And in my mind, it was their job to fill the drinks and prepare them so I can go and deliver them. Now, a lot of you go, you know what, Jacob, this is a very silly thing, for you to be upset about. It only costs you maybe a minute or two to fill up 2 or 3 drinks so that you can take them and deliver them to the customer. But for some reason that day, I was like, no, you need to complete my order. Now, the person that I told this to, I was firm, but I was very polite. I said, excuse me, could you please complete my order so I can take this to my customer and deliver it? And they were just like, well, the drinks are over there. I'm just like, I know, and I get it. But I'm just noticing that these few places are starting to continue to just give us the cups. It's not really technically, it's not technically my job to fill up the cups. It's actually your job to do it because you're supposed to give me the meal and all of its contents and accessories and condiments and straws and napkins and forks and knives or whatever, so it's complete, so that I can take it to my customer and give it to them knowing that it's complete. And I firmly is just like, please, could you please complete the order so I can take it to my customer? And I look back on that, and honestly, it was a Richard move of me to do that. I'll be honest, because it didn't really take up too much time out of my day to fill up the drinks. However, it was kind of the principle of the thing. I really felt like it was their job to complete it. I could be wrong. I would love to hear your comments in the comment section below if you have any thoughts on that. But again, like, that could have gone very wrong. I didn't know the individual personally that I was asking to do this. And honestly, if they were having a bad day, that situation could have turned really bad. Because especially when people are emotionally charged, we as humans, when we are emotionally charged and we're not thinking like in our cognitive, our actual consciousness, not our subconsciousness, we do very stupid things when we're angry. We do very stupid things when we're horny. We do very stupid things when we're not thinking clearly because, we're sad. There's a lot of factors that could have gone into that. So when I think of cancel culture, I think of, is it really your job to police social media? For me, it's no. I mean, I don't really post much on social media. The most I post is probably on Facebook, on my personal profile, so that my friends and family and other people that have added me can see what I'm doing with my life. And then everything else, Twitter and YouTube, our Facebook page for the Periodic Review podcast. I don't try to police people, because I really feel like deep down inside, we're going to do the right thing. We're going to make mistakes. Like, just like when I made a mistake, asking this guy to do his job. And we can learn from those mistakes, and we can move forward, and we can change. I think that's a lot of times we forget that we do these things, that we make mistakes. And I think, especially in this day and age, with everything being on social media and everybody posting what they're doing, like, we're going to make mistakes. People are going to make mistakes. And I think there should be some room for error, if that makes any sense. So this definition explains the limits of social canceling, despite its association with social justice. This is talking about social canceling. Movements by many writers. As a two-step psychological process, social canceling is agnostic to political affiliation, ideology, or another property. Nor is it limited to celebrities or well-known companies, or to certain forms of perceived transgressions. Anyone can cancel, and anyone can be canceled for any reason, as long as enough people think that the target has transgressed and they are willing to act punitively on their beliefs. I think there's plenty of great examples on this that I can think of. Like, for instance, when not only social media, but like even mainstream media have already painted somebody in a light that hasn't been proved or disproved or otherwise. Many people forget that we're innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And the scary thing is that when there's the quote unquote public court of law out in social media land, social canceling can occur. I think there was a lot of cops that were painted in poor lights without seeing all the footage of the body cams, without seeing all the footage of, all the security systems, without like all the testimonies of the people that were actually there, without talking to the officer, without talking to the victim, without going through all of the channels of our laws. People will automatically make a decision and start their outcry. And I think that's disingenuous, especially from a human perspective, because as human beings, we got to realize that we're going to make mistakes. And so when something serious happens, and especially happens to individuals, there needs to be due process. There needs to be a process in place to figure out, okay, well, was this person acting out of violence because he had a bad day? Is he acting out of violence because they're actually racist or transphobic or homophobic or whatever the case may be? There's usually a pattern that occurs. I think there was an instance where there was a pattern that occurred with a certain officer, and had quite a few disciplinary actions due to like violence and stuff like that. So it wasn't surprising that they perpetrated violence on somebody later on, and it became a big thing and it blew up and all that. But on the other side of the coin, there's also the individual who got caught in a bad situation, made the best decision as they thought they could, and now they're in court trying to decide if they acted fairly, if they acted in accordance to the laws, if they're acting in accordance to their policies. And it's always really important to wait until all of that has gone through before we start the public outcry, before we start the social hydras and the social canceling. So what's really interesting about social canceling and cancel culture in general is it's not a new thing. Sure, the space has changed. It's changed into a space of a technological space rather than a physical space. Those of us millennials and with boomer tendencies understand boycotting. Everybody remember boycotting? People going on strike, people going on protests. You know, they're taking theirselves some time, and they actually go out and they make signs, or they walk out of their workplace and they protest for a day or two or weeks on end. That's boycotting. That's actually a very close kin, or maybe the parent of social canceling. Kind of an interesting thought to think of there. But what really matters and what's really scary is when people start thinking that it's okay for them to take the law into their own hands. It especially is scary. I mean, I don't know if anybody has watched a lot of these kinds of videos, but every once in a while I like to dive into, the police audits. I like to dive into police stops and stuff like that, just to kind of see, kind of what's going like around. And it's really interesting to watch those videos. Or how about those road rage videos? Oh my goodness, where people literally like take the law in their own hands. How dare you, sir? You hit my car. Now I'm going to cause physical harm to you. I'm going to assault you. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Because number one, obviously if you ran out of your car and you're raging and raving and yelling and screaming at this other person that may have cut you off and like made you crash, or whether it T-boned you or whatever the case may be, me as a human being, I would just be grateful that I was alive. I'd be grateful that even though my car might be totaled, I'm going home with maybe some bumps and bruises, and I can still be in this life with my wife. I can still see my family and my friends. Like, when I've gotten into fender benders, the first thing I do is I get out and I say, hey, I'm really sorry. Is everything okay? Like, are you okay? Do you need an ambulance or whatever? Just make sure that the other person is okay. And if the other person is okay, honestly, usually they're just like, hey man, I'm really sorry. I stopped too fast. I thought, I saw a dog run out, or whatever the case may be. I personally have not gotten into any issues where there was like a little fender bender, a little accident where people weren't people, like they weren't human about it. There's only one time I can remember in my life where it was kind of scary. And it was because I road raged and I invoked emotion in another person because of my actions. And it was a very scary situation. What was I doing at that time? I think I was delivering sensitive documents. I think I was doing like secure document delivery, pickup, and cataloging at that time. And I was running in like one of those 10, 12, 15 passenger vans that had the windows blocked out. It just basically was like a box van. Nothing huge. And there was a guy that was just driving super crazy on the road, and I was trying to get around him and pass him normally. And for some reason, he just kept cutting me off. And I was just like, what is this guy doing? This is really weird. And he has all this stuff like tied onto his truck, like he's moving. He's got a mattress strapped on the top. I'm just like, dude, like if you're going to go slow, like go into the slow lane so I can go in the passing lane and pass you like I should be. This is when I was living in Phoenix. And when I finally got around him, he just like gave me these like really like scary eyes. I'm just like, okay, dude. And I flipped him off, and I was just like, yeah, you mother effer. Can't believe you cut me off and like not letting me pass you. Well, that's not what I was. Well, that's what I was saying in my car, but I was saying something different with my hand. Well, this is the scary part, is this person not only followed me for 5 miles going down the freeway, but he followed me all the way to where I was going to pick up or drop off documents. And so he was still following me. And I'm just like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to have to drive around a little longer to see if he'll kind of leave me and, go away. And so there I was driving around. I kind of did a couple of circles around the complex that I was going to. And then I went up the road a little bit and then turned around and came back. And it was just really clear that this guy was following me. And so I was just like, okay, well, I really hope this guy doesn't have a gun or a knife, but I'm ready to protect myself if I need to. And so I finally get back to the complex. I didn't park outside of the place that I was going to, but I parked a couple of suites back. And I pulled over, I put my blinkers on. I got out of my van to see what he was going to do. And he took one look at me, gave me the stink eye again, and he drove off. And I feel very lucky and blessed that nothing came out of that. And I actually learned a very valuable lesson. If people are having a bad day, their bad day could go worse very quickly. So don't piss off the mob. Well, don't piss off individuals in general, but definitely don't piss off the mob. So this is just my advice to you. Don't flip people off while you're driving. Don't drive recklessly if somebody else is driving recklessly and like cuts you off or whatever. Just give them space and let them do their thing. Because it's possible they're just having a bad day. And that bad day could it could go worse. So many of these individuals or organizations who use social media to cancel others due to their wrongthink are often called social justice warriors or SJWs. And this is something I actually really didn't know about. Like I've never heard of SJWs. And this is why I'm a millennial, but with some boomer tendencies, is because I like watching stuff and like being up on some technological things, but mostly I just want them to work. I just want them to be good tools. I just want to have a good TV that's going to last me for the rest of my life. I just want a good car that's not going to run down and break apart after 5 years. I want a computer that I buy that I can just use for the rest of my life and not have to worry about upgrading. I just want it to work. I just want it to do what it needs to do. Well, so I learned about SJWs through a channel called The Quartering. This is Jeremy Hambley. And he had a very interesting past because he started out doing, there's a card game, playable, tradable card game, sometimes called TCGs or CCGs. This game was called Magic the Gathering, and he did a lot of card openings. He did a lot of news on Magic the Gathering. I can't remember what his channel was called initially. I think it was like MTG something. Gosh, I can't remember it, but I watched him way back when he first had his channel, and he did a lot of great things for the community. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that if they hear this and they're a part of the community and hated him, they're going to be on the other side of the coin. But I just saw him as a normal guy, trying to do something that he loves, that he's passionate about. And I remember when the card quality and when the game quality was going down. I remember when tournaments were really struggling and people were having a hard time actually having this game in like their local game stores and stuff like that. I remember when people started literally attacking him, both on YouTube and Twitter, and basically people were starting to cancel him. And so he tried to rebrand himself. I remember him changing his name, I think at least once. I think it became like Unsleeved Media, I think, at that point. And he actually uncovered a lot of the pedophiles that were being hidden in these gaming stores, or in these tournaments and stuff like that, and being around these young kids. I think he did a lot for the community, and that I might be biased because I did enjoy his content and I did watch his content quite often. And so he was a man after my heart because he was doing something he loved, something he was very passionate about. He felt like he was defending. Now, don't get me wrong, he did have some spicy takes against some people. I think the cosplayer Sparks, oh gosh, what was her name? I can't remember her name, but he had some spicy takes on some of the things that they were doing. And some other people he had some disagreements with, which were a bit spicy. I agree. They might have been a little bit more over the top, a little more than it probably should have been. I do agree with that. And unfortunately, he literally got canceled. He got to the point where he could not do that channel anymore. Like, he fell out of love with it. Also, he ended up getting banned from the tournaments because of all the hate and vitriolness that he got from it through social media. But people actually went after his livelihood. They got his Patreon shut down. All these things just to say, haha, we don't like the way you think and the way you talk about people, so therefore you are no longer able to make money in this space. And we're going to do everything you can to take you out. And it's really sad. Now, on the other side, he started a new channel called The Quartering. And not only did that channel do 3 or 4 or so times the amount of subscribers and views than his Magic the Gathering content, it's just kind of is more news stuff. And I think it's more of a focus in like gaming culture, comic books and collectibles and card games and anime and all that fun stuff. It doesn't do so much anime now that I think about it. But that's kind of one of the things that he was able to, like a phoenix, like rise from the ashes, from being canceled to the point where he was back where I feel like he needed to be, which is still a part of some community, like doing content on YouTube. And I think he does a really great job. But honestly, it just makes me sad that people decide that it's important for them to do this kind of things. When if there was something really illegal going on, they could go to, the authorities and make a complaint and file a criminal, whatever you call them. You make a complaint against somebody saying, hey, they're doing something illegal, and then they go and investigate. I can't think of the word right now. My English is amazing. But just like a couple more thoughts here. We find that our government tolerates these individuals and organizations. I mean, all these things are happening like on Twitter. All these things are happening on Facebook and on YouTube. Have you ever been in the comments on YouTube? Holy crap, they're negative. But it's tolerated. And that's really sad. I mean, not to go too far off topic here, but I feel like there's a lot of tolerance when it comes to organizations like Antifa and Black Lives Matter. And I feel like our government kind of cherry picks which entities they wish to protect or to cancel or to basically say, aha, you're not allowed to do that anymore, and basically cut off their stream of income. And it's just really sad. So cancellation doesn't always work, but for instances where it does, how do we live in a world where every Richard and Karen or any other organizations are allowed to run free and to cancel whomever they want? Now, again, I do understand that when people do go after individuals or organizations and try to focus on taking away their livelihood so they can no longer do what they're doing, like, how do we live in a world where people can do that? Like, let's say it's even a low number. Let's say it only happens 15% out of 100. So 15 times, let's say this is just magical numbers here. I'm not a statistician or anything like that, just so everybody knows. But let's say that 15% of all the people and organizations that get socially canceled actually work. So this is something that's always on our minds with this podcast, because we don't always know if the things that we say will be taken out of context, or people will just like grab a clip and they'll just be like, hey, listen, this is what Jacob said on the Periodic Review podcast. We should definitely go after him because he's saying things that we don't like. And then, of course, those organizations like spread it out. The hydratic mob rise up, and then they go after that individual. So how do we reconcile that as human beings? Why do we think it's okay for these individuals to do this? And not only that, but what about the individuals that they accused and canceled, like unwittingly or unknowingly, that they were innocent? And there's no repercussions for those people. Like, and where does these black and white lines turn gray, and where's the line, and where does it cross? Like, is there a line? I don't know. Seemingly it doesn't look like it. It feels like people can say whatever they want about anybody without much repercussions. Now, a lot of us understand there are some legal terms and there are some things that you can do against people if they are saying defamatory things that are not correct. But again, it's like a he said, she said stuff. So it's going to be really hard unless you have like some really compelling and hard evidence and a very good track of like emails and screenshots and all of this information where you can really say and go to your lawyers and be like, hey, I'm being defamed and this has been happening for a while now. Here's all the information. Can we make a case against this person and send them a cease and desist letter? I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer, but that's just how I understand it. I could be wrong. Love to hear your comments down below. If you are understanding the laws, I'd love to hear your comments on that. It seems that there is a culture which demands there be a line that freedom of speech cannot cross. What lines have been drawn in the sand? Again, going to my black and white, gray, where's the line at? So for me, like, I'm perfectly okay for people who believe in flat earth to share the information that they think and deem worthy to be put out there. I'm totally okay with that. I'm totally okay with people who have their tinfoil hats on and they have their conspiracy theories that they want to spin on things. Even though it's not even correct, or even if it's even factually incorrect, or maybe there's some loosey-goosey stuff and just like, well, there's maybe some truth to this. I still think it's okay for platforms to share that information. I'm totally okay with people if they want to go out there and say, Jacob does not know what he's talking about. He's bad at English. I'm okay if you want to do that. So for me, here's where my line is. When it starts to come to the point where people are calling for violence against somebody, or if they're saying that they are going to be violent against somebody. No, not like, oh, I dislike this person. They make me angry. That's not really violent, or, hey, that person is not saying things that I like, so therefore we should attack them. Like, attack, well, what does that even mean? But if somebody's just like, I hate Jacob so, like if they put this on social media, for instance, I hate Jacob so much, I'm going to find out where he lives and I'm going to break his legs. That to me is a very clear message that you want to do violence against me. I think that's a pretty firm line for me. I don't think it's okay to say stuff like that. Just like it's not okay to say that you're going to harm the president in one way or the other. I don't think it's okay for you to say that about any other person or human being. That's where the line is for me, especially when it comes to like sexual violence. I think that's a big no line for me. I don't think it's okay for people to say, like, I'm going to go and I'm going to manhandle this person in a sexual way. Well, let's just be blunt about it. Like, say, I am going to go out and I'm going to rape Jacob. I do not think that's okay for people to say. I do not think that it's okay for people to put that on social media, on Twitter, on YouTube, or to wish death on people, or to say that you're going to kill somebody, even if it's a joke. I really feel that sexual and physical violent things, like actually saying those things, is not okay. That's kind of my line. So how does this affect the American culture? How does it divide Americans? How does it divide human beings? Well, psychology says that human beings like to be a part of a tribe. They like to be a part of a culture or a group or an organization that makes them feel like they're a part of something. That makes them feel like I'm doing what's right because these other people say that it is, and I'm doing it too, and they like me for it. That also works with mob mentality on social media. That's why they call it the social hydra, or at least this particular article did. And I found it very interesting. That's why I'm sharing this. Now, where do we go from here? Honestly, I think people really do need to reach down and look within themselves and to decide for themselves, how can I be a better human being today than I was yesterday? You know, my neighbor Joe Smith, he keeps blowing his leaves onto my lawn. Oh, I don't like that guy. He keeps blowing his leaves on my lawn. Or his dog keeps shitting in my yard. Because every time he goes for a walk, he lets his dog shit in my yard and he doesn't pick it up. So next time, I'm going to take that bag of shit and I'm going to go put it on their doorstep. Now, I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying, really think about what that does for you. Like, let's say you do get that bag of shit, of said shit, and you put it in a paper bag and you light it and you put it on your neighbor's porch, and they open the door after you ring it and they stomp it out and find out it's dog shit. Now, it might be funny in the moment, but I think if you really pull back your view and kind of broaden your horizon, what does that really do for you? Well, it gives me a short sense of pleasure. Sure. Granted. I think everybody would think it'd be dang funny if their neighbor was stomping on a bag of burning dog shit. But anyway, in the grand scheme of things, how is this going to help you? How is this going to help humanity, the human race? Now, I think, this is me thinking very idealistically, I really think we can live in a world where we can say, hey, Mr. Handy, I've noticed that whenever you walk your dog, that you let your dog use its my grass as its restroom, and you haven't been picking it up. Is there something that I can do to help you to make sure that when your dog does its business that you would pick it up? Or do you need some bags? Like, I bought a couple of rolls of bags for you. I wasn't sure if you'd ran out and you just forgot or what, but I would just really appreciate it if you would pick up after your dog. And I think, again, this is my idealistic world here. I think that Mr. Handy would look at him and go, you know, I've been having a really bad week this week. And I've just honestly not cared to pick up after my dog. And I haven't been bringing my dog baggies with me. You know, and I'm really sorry. I'll make sure to pick up after my dog from now on. And I think you guys can shake hands. You and Mr. Handy can shake hands. I like how that worked out. And you can go your separate ways and live your lives just a little bit better. But that's the thing too, is that not only do we have to feel like it's okay for us to give feedback, but also to be able to take feedback from other people. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but we have to be reasonable people for other people to be reasonable as well. That's just kind of my take on it. Okay. So this is the part where I decide, okay, how can we do things differently? Because I personally am terrified of what it would mean where we can start to create specific laws to protect or prevent certain speech, which can lead to a slippery slope. And I agree with that. Because the First Amendment rights, it's pretty black and white. You can pretty much say anything. But I think we can have that line in these tech conglomerates where they can be like, okay, you're actually saying you want to be violent against this person with actual words that perpetuate that. Not just like, I don't like this person. That's not hate speech. Or I disagree with this person and their ideologies. Or their sex. Or their political. Or their religious. But I think we can all agree that real words that dictate violence, we can find those. And it's pretty black and white in my mind. I could be wrong. But I think that creating like full laws and litigation against speech, like forcing people to refer to people in a different way, or forcing people to say, hey, you can't talk like that, or you have to talk like this. That can get pretty dicey. Because unless you can really lay out the law with accordance with that, it's going to be really difficult, especially if it's a broad stroke. And I think we see that in a lot of these other countries, especially in like Europe and stuff like that, where they have a lot of these different laws about speech. And I know our country's not perfect. I will agree. America's not perfect. But to be honest, it's probably the best country out there when it comes to freedom of speech. And I'm actually very grateful that I live in a country that allows us to speak the way that we can speak. That we can disagree with political ideologies, that we can disagree with religious ideologies, that we can disagree with sexual ideologies. And I think it's okay to disagree. And I think we can all agree that it's okay to have differing opinions. But actual violent speech, especially sexually violent speech, is not okay. And I think these tech companies can do better on that. I do believe that we can live in a world where we can disagree with one another. And I definitely respect people who disagree with me. And I think it's okay. I can still say, hey, we don't agree on that political issue or that social issue or that religious issue. But you know what? It's perfectly okay, man. We can still go out to, you and your wife and I, and my wife, we can go out to eat still and have a good time, even though we disagree on these kinds of things. So if you haven't already, hopefully we have earned your follow today. So if you haven't already, please hit that subscription button, ring that bell so you know when we go live. We are doing these podcasts live. Every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, which is 9 p.m. Central. Now, I did not think that this particular podcast was going to go close to an hour today. And I actually had another topic, and I'll probably save that for another one. But the only thing I can say, thank you so much for for listening to this podcast. I hope at some point in time we'll get cameras and it'll actually be a good viewing experience for everyone. But we're so indeed grateful for those that are listening, for those that are following, for those that are being part of what we're trying to do, which is trying to be better human beings today than we were yesterday. And honestly, from one human being to another, I just want to say that I love you. If you haven't heard anybody tell you that they loved you today, I want you to know that I love you. As a brother from another mother to you. Thank you all so much for watching. And from our family to yours, good night.